The billionaire stood before hundreds of London's most powerful executives, but he refused to sign the deal. Instead, he looked directly at the head of security and asked only one question. "Where is the young security guard who was fired this morning?" The entire boardroom fell silent. The chairman's voice grew colder. "Bring him back. Now." No one understood. Why would one of the richest men in Britain cancel a billion-pound business deal? For an ordinary security guard? The executives exchanged nervous glances. Some began to panic. Because only hours earlier, that same security guard had been humiliated, mocked, insulted, thrown out of the building like he was nothing. No one knew. The young man they had called worthless was the billionaire's only son. And before this day was over, one act of cruelty, one act of kindness, and one impossible decision would change every life inside Harrison Royal Group forever. The man no one noticed. Morning arrived over London. The glass towers of Harrison Royal Group reflected the golden sunrise. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Executives stepped out wearing designer suits. Investors, politicians, celebrities. Everyone knew Harrison Royal was one of the most respected companies in the country. But among the crowd, one young man quietly adjusted his security uniform. His name was Daniel Harrison. To everyone else, he was simply the new security guard. He greeted every visitor with the same warm smile. "Good morning. Welcome. God bless your day." Most people ignored him. Some barely looked in his direction. Others treated him as if he were invisible. Daniel never complained. Instead, each morning before taking his position, he opened the small Bible he carried in his jacket pocket. He whispered softly, "Lord, don't let me become proud because of who my Father is. Teach me to see people the way you see them." Then he closed the Bible and went to work. Just before noon, a black luxury car pulled up outside the building. Out stepped an elderly woman carrying several heavy bags. Her walking stick slipped. The bags fell across the pavement. People walked past. No one stopped. Some executives glanced at her, then continued toward the entrance. Daniel immediately left his post. He knelt beside the woman. "Are you all right, ma'am?" She smiled weakly. "My legs aren't as strong as they used to be." Daniel gathered every bag. He walked her safely to the entrance. Then he quietly bought her a cup of tea from the cafe inside the building. The elderly woman looked at him with grateful eyes. "You've shown me more kindness than people with far more money." Daniel smiled. "My mother taught me that every person deserves dignity." As they spoke, someone was watching from the top floor, behind the tinted glass of the chairman's office. Sir Edward Harrison stood silently. He had seen everything. A gentle smile crossed his face. "My son, you haven't forgotten who you are." But on the ground floor, not everyone was pleased. Victor Collins, the company's ambitious operations director, stormed toward Daniel. His face burned with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" Daniel stood respectfully. "I was helping her, sir." Victor pointed toward the security desk. "You abandoned your position. You embarrassed this company. You'll answer for this." Several employees looked on. Some shook their heads. Others whispered, "The new guard won't last the week." Daniel quietly returned to his post. He said nothing. He simply prayed in his heart, "Father, help me choose humility over pride." He didn't know. This small act of kindness had already set something much bigger in motion. Because upstairs, Sir Edward had just made a decision that would test every heart inside the company. And by the end of the day, London's most successful executives would discover that the greatest position in God's kingdom is not found in a corner office, but in a humble heart. The humiliation that changed everything. The afternoon meeting was unlike any other. The Grand Executive Hall of Harrison Royal Group was filled with London's most influential business leaders. Every chair was occupied. Every screen displayed the company's newest billion-pound investment project. Only one person remained standing. Daniel, the young security guard. His assignment was simple: Protect the entrance. Nothing more. As the meeting began, a little girl, no older than 8, wandered away from her mother. She accidentally walked toward a restricted staircase. Daniel reacted instantly. He rushed across the marble floor and gently pulled her away just seconds before she reached an unsafe construction area. The frightened child burst into tears. Daniel knelt beside her. "It's all right. You're safe." Her mother arrived moments later, crying, Thank you for saving my daughter." Several guests applauded. But before Daniel could respond, Victor Collins stormed across the room. His face burned with rage. "What have you done now?" Daniel stood respectfully. The little girl was in danger. Victor didn't care. "You abandoned your position again. In front of our investors. You've embarrassed this company for the last time." Without allowing Daniel to explain, Victor pulled the security badge from Daniel's uniform. The sound echoed through the silent hall. "You're fired." The room fell silent. Some employees looked away. Others whispered. One investor quietly muttered, "He only saved a child." Daniel lowered his head. "I never meant to cause trouble." Victor pointed toward the exit. "Leave this building immediately." Daniel slowly removed his security cap. He looked once toward heaven, then quietly whispered, "Father, you know my heart." He walked away without arguing, without defending himself, without revealing who he truly was, watching everything from the private balcony above. Sir Edward Harrison closed his eyes. His heart broke. "My son, you've passed the test." But someone else's test had only just begun. The secret that shook the company. Less than 30 minutes later, every executive received an emergency message. Mandatory board meeting. Attendance required immediately. Confusion spread throughout the building. No one knew why. Inside the executive boardroom, silence filled the air. Then, the massive doors opened. Sir Edward Harrison entered. The billionaire chairman rarely appeared without notice. Today, his expression was impossible to read. He slowly looked around the room, then asked one question. "Where is the security guard who was dismissed today?" Victor smiled confidently. "I handled the situation, sir." He violated company protocol. Sir Edward remained silent. He walked toward the large boardroom window overlooking London. After several moments, he turned back. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "Bring him back." Victor frowned. "Sir, he's just a security guard." Sir Edward's eyes locked onto his. "No. He is far more than that." The room became still. Several executives exchanged nervous glances. Sir Edward reached into his jacket pocket and placed a family photograph on the polished conference table. Everyone leaned forward. The photograph showed Sir Edward, standing beside his wife, and the same young security guard they had mocked all week. Gasps echoed through the room. Victor's face lost all color. One executive whispered, "It can't be." Sir Edward finally spoke. "This young man is Daniel Harrison, my only son." The room froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Victor staggered backwards. His hands began to shake. But why would he work as a security guard? Sir Edward answered quietly. "Because I wanted to know who could be trusted with leadership. I wanted to discover who respected people without knowing their status." He paused. "And today, you all revealed your hearts." A heavy silence settled over the room. Then Sir Edward looked directly at Victor. "What happened next will determine whether any of you deserve to remain in this company." No one realized. The greatest test was still ahead, because Daniel had already left the building, and what happened to him outside would change far more than Harrison Royal Group. The man everyone rejected became the man everyone needed. Daniel walked slowly through the busy streets of London. The security uniform he had proudly worn that morning was folded neatly over his arm. He wasn't angry. He wasn't bitter. He simply whispered, "Lord, if this is where you are leading me, I'll trust you." Dark clouds gathered over the city. A cold wind swept through the streets. As Daniel passed a busy intersection, he noticed a crowd gathering. People were shouting. A luxury car had collided with another vehicle. Smoke poured from the engine. The driver's door was crushed shut. Inside sat an elderly man, trapped and struggling to breathe. Most people stood back. Some recorded the accident on their phones. Others waited for emergency services. Daniel didn't hesitate. He rushed toward the burning vehicle. Ignoring the danger, he forced open the damaged passenger door. With all his strength, he pulled the injured man to safety just seconds before flames engulfed the car.
Moments later.
The vehicle exploded. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted, "That young man saved his life." Within minutes, ambulances and police arrived. As paramedics treated the elderly man, one of them turned to Daniel. "Do you know who you've rescued?" Daniel gently shook his head. "No." The paramedic smiled. "That's Lord William Ashford, chairman of the Royal Healthcare Trust. He oversees hundreds of hospitals across the United Kingdom." Daniel simply replied, "I'm just grateful he's alive." Lord Ashford slowly opened his eyes. He reached for Daniel's hand. "You risked your life. For someone you didn't even know." Daniel smiled. "My faith teaches me that every life matters." Lord Ashford's eyes filled with tears. "Young man, what is your name?" "Daniel Harrison." The old man paused. "Harrison." Daniel nodded. Before he could explain further, a familiar black Rolls-Royce stopped nearby. Sir Edward Harrison stepped out. He walked straight toward his son. Without saying a word, he embraced him. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Reporters began taking photographs. News cameras captured everything. One journalist whispered, "That's Sir Edward Harrison. Why is he hugging a former security guard?" Sir Edward looked at the cameras. His voice carried across the street. "He isn't just a security guard. He's my son." Gasps spread through the crowd. Meanwhile, back at Harrison Royal Group, Victor Collins was watching the live news broadcast. His face turned pale. He realized he had not only fired the chairman's son, he had humiliated the very man who had just become London's newest hero. But heaven was not finished. The greatest decision of Daniel's life would be made that very evening. The promotion no one expected. That evening, every employee gathered inside Harrison Royal Group's Grand Hall. No one spoke. The atmosphere was heavy with expectation. Sir Edward walked onto the stage. Daniel stood quietly beside him, still wearing the same simple clothes. Sir Edward addressed the room. "Today, I discovered something. A company is not measured by its profits. It is measured by the character of its people." He turned toward Victor Collins. "You judged a man by his uniform. You punished compassion. You ignored integrity. Leadership without humility is dangerous." Victor lowered his head. "I'm sorry. I failed." Sir Edward remained silent for a moment. Then he looked at Daniel. "My son, you were offered every privilege. But you chose humility. You served when no one was watching. You forgave when you were humiliated. You protected others without expecting recognition." He smiled with pride. "Today, I'm not rewarding you because you're my son. I'm rewarding you because you've proven your character." The audience erupted into applause. Then Daniel stepped forward. Everyone expected him to accept a prestigious executive position. Instead, he surprised the entire room. "I'll accept the responsibility. But on one condition." The hall fell silent. No employee at Harrison Royal Group will ever lose their dignity because of their position. Every cleaner, every receptionist, every driver, every security guard, they will all be treated with equal respect. The room stood to its feet. Many employees wiped away tears. Even Victor was deeply moved. Daniel then opened the small Bible he had carried in his pocket throughout the entire test. He read aloud, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." 1 Samuel